Williams, the manager of the client company, boastfully states, "My name is on the patent," claiming to have received one. The technology my predecessor and I spent years building is ridiculous. I can't allow Williams, who recently received the job, to claim credit for it. However, upon reflection, that isn't feasible. My patent cannot be stolen by Williams. Most likely, he simply applied in the hopes of seeing his name on it and having a promising future. What awaits him, though? I sarcastically remark, "Good luck with that," trying not to laugh. I am James Johnson, the president of a small factory that employs 20 people. It has been nearly 10 years since I inherited the factory from my late father. I started out as a manager, but once my father passed away at the age of 46, I was summoned home and assumed the role of president. I was genuinely nervous at the time because, although I always knew I would take over eventually, I never anticipated it happening so quickly. I had known my father's factory since I was a little child, and I had experience working for a manufacturing company, so I knew what manufacturing was all about. But once I was elected president, I suffered a lot and came to terms with my own inadequacies. The responsibilities of a president are entirely different from those of a middle manager overseeing 20 employees. My father worked every day while covered in oil, and I now realize how incredible he was. My father had fostered a manufacturing mentality in the workers who stood behind me. I've come this far because of them. Not only that, but I was also lucky to have strong relationships at our client businesses. S Industries is our primary client. Michael Jones was the manager in charge of S Industries. When I was a new president and knew nothing, Jones, who had a shaved head and a low stance, greeted me with a smile. Even though he is almost 10 years older than I am, neither our ages nor our positions mattered to us. He spent a lot of time with me as a buddy and at other times treated me like a brother or a student mentor. My relationship with him helped our plant establish itself as a reliable subcontractor for S Industries. Jones and I were able to develop a unique technology about 5 years ago. Although it was unobtrusive, it greatly increased the durability of the parts we supplied by making them effectively. There was an unwritten agreement that Jones's substantial contribution to this technological advancement would only be utilized for the parts we provided to S Industries. Although the use was restricted, I was content with it. Each relationship felt like a tie between us, and I relished the satisfaction of being able to produce something. This included the technology developed with Jones, the parts produced using it, and the products of S Industries that made use of those parts. However, I learned that Jones was retiring a few years later. Even though it was unavoidable, I was deeply saddened. Jones surprised me by saying, "James, you should patent this technology." After he retired, who knows what will happen to the company's policies when I leave? To be honest, I didn't understand what he was saying at the moment. The idea of patenting the technologies we created together had never occurred to me. Jones' caution regarding the ambiguous business policies began to make sense shortly after he left. "If you make this technology your own, you'll never go hungry, so make sure to handle the proper procedures." Jones seemed unusually serious, which made a big impression on me, because he generally spoke in jest. A man named Robert Williams, who had been transferred from head office, became the new manager after Jones retired. He was a man wearing silver-framed glasses and had remarkably huge eyes. James exercised caution around Williams. Regarding Williams, Jones had stated, "He's a man who won't hesitate to use any means to achieve his goals, even if he's brilliant." With this guidance, Jones, who never spoke poorly of others, made a lasting impression on me. As he described, Williams exuded a sense of acute, superior skill. Even when he visited clients, Jones maintained a low profile and always dressed in business attire. Williams, meanwhile, always wore a sharp suit and denigrated everyone else. He kept his communication with the subcontractors strictly business-related and established a clear boundary between them. I realized how special my relationship with Jones had been, even though this might have been more normal. Williams and Jones couldn't be more different. It could be challenging to keep up. The same level of interaction with S Industries as previously. It was depressing to think of. Williams. Approximately 6 months after taking over as manager, Williams started negotiating price reductions. I want to talk about the parts we're currently ordering. Mr. Johnson, would you be able to see us as soon as possible? Williams spoke calmly, but it was obvious that he was determined. I recognized that this was probably the same problem because I had heard about price decreases from other subcontractors. The moment I realized this, my stomach started to ache. We had no intention of agreeing to a price reduction, but we couldn't refuse the meeting request either. Understood. How about next? Wednesday? I replied, not enthusiastically. Since our factory is small, even as president, I have to work on the floor. Considering that, I thought this was a quick response. But Williams wasn't satisfied. That's quite late. I said as soon as possible. Please make it this week. The pressure from Williams was palpable. I started to worry that we wouldn't be able to refuse the price reduction if this continued. Okay, how about the day after tomorrow at 5:00 p.m.? I think I can manage that. It might affect our work a bit, but a late afternoon meeting on a weekday could be adjusted. I'd offered this as a significant concession, but Williams still seemed reluctant. Fine. The day after tomorrow. Well, it can't be helped, he said, and abruptly hung up the phone. From this one call, I developed a strong dislike for Williams. Jones's warning to be careful with him might have had some influence on me. 2 days later, I visited S Industries as scheduled. I was shown to the meeting room where I faced Williams one-on-one. Williams got straight to the point about the price reduction. I'll get to the point. We need your cooperation to reduce the price of the parts we ordered by 10%. He proposed without any preamble. The stark difference from Jones, who valued communication, above all, was shocking. The parts we supply to S Industries have very small profit margins per piece. A 10% price reduction on such low-margin parts is simply out of the question. A 10% price reduction is impossible. If we agreed that the more we deliver, the more we'd lose, I stated firmly, and Williams immediately responded, then how much of a reduction can you accept? 8%, 5%, or 3%? In Williams's mind, a price reduction was a given from the start. But for us, even a 1% reduction was unacceptable. Considering the cost of raw materials, labor, and the performance of our parts, we should be asking for a price increase. Mr. Williams, are you aware of how important our parts are? If you did, I don't think you would. Suggest a price cut, I asserted confidently, though my heart was pounding. If this caused the contract to be canceled, our small factory would be done for. The other subcontractors agreed to the terms, but you're saying you won't. Is that right? His large eyes, behind silver-framed glasses, glared at me. My temples throbbed with pain, and I couldn't respond, only returning his stare in silence. Then Williams smiled wryly. It seems Mr. Johnson is as tough as Jones said. You'd rather not sell than accept a price cut, is that it? He continued. Indeed, if we can't get your parts, it's us who will suffer. Fine. Let's consider this proposal withdrawn, Williams said, pressing his glasses with his fingers and looking away. I felt my face flush, but my relief was short-lived. I'll withdraw this time, but this isn't over. He threw this remark at me as I was about to leave the conference room. A chill ran down my spine. Williams was a man who would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Jones's words from back then weighed heavily on me. From that day, I lived in fear of Williams's words. I was constantly anxious about what he might do next. However, no actions came from Williams, and peaceful days passed by. We continued to manufacture and deliver parts to S Industries as usual. The routine was monotonous but fulfilling, and over time, Williams's words began to fade from my mind, though they never completely disappeared. The only significant change was that one of our mid-level employees resigned. He was a diligent worker with solid skills, and his departure was a blow to the company. Our wages were never high, and he had young children and elderly parents to care for. Given his family circumstances, managing on our salary was difficult, and we couldn't do anything about it when he said it was too hard to make ends meet without better pay. Fortunately, we were able to hire a replacement, so we managed to get through the crisis. However, this incident led to a significant disaster. About a year after the employee resigned, I was summoned by Williams. Just like that day, I faced him again. "Mr. Johnson, do you know why I've asked you here today?" Williams's large eyes glared at me. From his confident demeanor, I sensed this wasn't a simple price negotiation. If it's about a price cut, we can't agree to that. I spoke cautiously, watching his reaction. Williams smirked. "It's not about a price cut. It's about reducing the order volume." Reducing the order volume? It was hard to grasp at first. I had heard that S Industries sales were going strong. Our parts were extensively used in their products, and our deliveries were steadily increasing. A sudden reduction was unexpected. If it were a minor reduction, Williams wouldn't be involved, but since he was, it must be significant. "How much are we talking about?" I asked in a sunken voice. Williams replied with a triumphant smile. "First, we'll cut it by 20%. Then, in a year, we'll cut it by half, and in 2 years, it will be 0. Williams's grin widened as he watched my face turn pale. A 20% reduction would already be a significant blow, but if it's halved in a year, our company would be doomed. I never imagined that rejecting the price cut would have such severe repercussions. But what does it mean that they won't use our parts at all? That's a problem for your company. 2, I started to say, but Williams cut me off. "We've decided to manufacture the parts in-house. It's too risky to leave it to you. You're too stubborn, saying you'd rather not sell than lower the price. If we let it be, you'd eventually demand unreasonable price increases." We took precautions. Williams, usually a man of few words, was suddenly talkative. "It's not unusual for a company to decide to produce parts in-house instead of relying on subcontractors if the parts are simple enough. It's the buyer's choice whether to make them or outsource them. But the parts we supply are not that simple. They require specialized technology, and using substitute parts would necessitate redesigning the entire product. Something is happening inside S Industries. I don't know exactly what that something is, but what's certain is that our order volume will be reduced by 20%, and a year later, it will be halved, and in 2 years, it will be 0. Faced with this devastating notice, I left S Industries feeling utterly despondent. From that day, my mind was consumed with questions about what had happened at S Industries. The technology Jones that I developed can't be easily replicated, so why the crisis our company is facing and the changes at S Industries? These thoughts kept me awake at night. Even when I went to bed, I couldn't sleep, weighed down by a gloomy feeling. One night as I lay awake, Jones's words crossed my mind. "Williams is a man who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals." This thought sank my spirit even further. Around that time, John Smith, who had left the company a year ago, appeared. He had resigned due to financial reasons, saying he couldn't support his family on our salary. If we'd had the financial means, we would have done anything to keep him. Smith suddenly showed up before me, dropped to his knees. "Mr. Johnson, I am so sorry," he said, breaking down into tears. It was so sudden that my mind went blank. "What happened? Why are you here like this?" I asked Smith, trying to understand the situation. But as soon as I spoke, it felt like the fog in my mind cleared away all at once. The changes at S Industries, the reduction in parts orders, Williams's schemes, Smith's resignation. Smith had also been involved in the development of the new technology Jones, and I worked on. "Smith, you don't mean..." Before I could finish, Smith bowed even lower, his forehead nearly touching the ground. The reason why S Industries no longer needed our parts started to become clear. After leaving our company, Smith had joined S Industries. No, he hadn't just resigned and found a new job. He left specifically to join S Industries. Somehow, Williams had found out that Smith was in financial trouble. Knowing Smith's situation, Williams offered him a lucrative position and poached him from us. At S Industries, Smith had successfully used the technology he learned at our company to manufacture the parts. He knew he shouldn't have done this, but Smith had no choice but to obey Williams. He was probably threatened with being fired if he didn't comply. With Smith's help, S Industries had solidified their ability to manufacture the parts in-house. At this stage, there were still issues with quality and mass production, so our orders had only been reduced by 20%. But in a year, these issues would be resolved. If that happened, unable to bear the guilt, Smith tearfully and haltingly revealed S Industries' internal situation. No matter the circumstances, leaking a company's technology is unforgivable. But I felt even greater anger toward Williams, who exploited Smith's weaknesses and manipulated him with money. Production of the parts is progressing. I can't stop it anymore. At this rate, it'll be perfected before the year is out. If that happens, our contract would be canceled. Faced with this dizzying reality, I felt a moment of darkness before my eyes. But then another of Jones's words came to mind. James, you should patent this technology. Once I'm gone, who knows what will happen to the company's policies? Reflecting on Jones's words, I felt strength surging through my body. Now I had to show that I was ready to fight back. There was only one way to confront the giant that is S Industries. I put into action the strategy I had prepared for this moment. Nearly a year after Williams informed me of the reduction, the time had come. Williams summoned me again. I visited S Industries and faced Williams in the meeting room for the third time. With a surly expression, Williams silently pointed to a chair with his chin, indicating for me to sit. His attitude was noticeably different from the previous two meetings. He seemed to have decided this would be our final encounter and deliberately adopted a disdainful demeanor. Let's skip the small talk and get straight to the point. We're ending our contract for your parts this month. Williams said this in one breath and began to rise from his seat. Wait a minute. You can't just suddenly end it like that. We had agreed on a 50% reduction for at least another year. I managed to stop him, and he responded with a mocking smile. We managed to scale up production faster than expected, so it's foolish to keep buying expensive parts from you. Don't talk about agreements when you're just a subcontractor. Williams's triumphant attitude made my stomach churn with anger. Slapping Smith with cash, stealing our technology, then mocking subcontractors. Intense anger welled up inside me, and I felt my face grow hot. I took a deep breath to calm myself before speaking. Mr. Williams, poaching our employees and stealing our technology. That's pretty cowardly. As soon as I said this, Williams's eyebrow twitched, but he showed little surprise, raising one corner of his lips as he began to speak with a displeased tone. Oh, you knew it. It was bound to come out eventually, so I wasn't exactly hiding it. Thanks to your excellent employee who left you, we were able to perfectly replicate it. This is the power of a top-tier company. We don't need a small-town factory anymore. And let me tell you something else. Williams paused, holding his breath before giving a smug smile. I've patented it under my name. Patenting it? That's absurd. There was no way I could let Williams take credit for the technology that Jones and I had developed over the years. But when I thought about it, that was impossible. Williams couldn't steal my patent. He was probably just trying to apply for the patent. That technology was developed by our company. How can you claim it, Mr. Williams? Patents are all about who gets there first. I don't care what agreement you and Jones had. It's ours now. So you can't use that technology anymore. If you do, I'll sue you for patent infringement. Sorry, but it's game over for you, Williams said, barely suppressing his laughter. He might envision a rosy future with his name on the patent, but he's gravely mistaken. What awaits him is not heaven but hell. Mr. Williams, you're really deceitful, but nothing will go as you plan. In the end, justice will prevail. No matter what you try, it will be futile. I hinted at this as a warning, but Williams was too elated to notice. Futile? I don't waste my efforts. Justice will prevail. Don't make me laugh. The winner defines. Justice. The sharpness that once marked Williams's elite demeanor had vanished. Convinced of his victory, he was blind to the obstacles at his feet. His once intimidating silver-framed glasses and glaring eyes now seemed like mere ornaments. Unaware of the impending disaster, Williams looked like a clown to me. Good luck with that. I held back my laughter as I left the meeting room. A month later, Williams called me. I knew what it was about. "Johnson, did you deceive me?" Williams shouted angrily. He must have found out the patent was denied. "What did I deceive you about?" I asked innocently, which only made Williams angrier. "You bastard! How dare you? Why didn't you tell me you already had the patent?" "You never asked." Williams must have started the patent process without thorough research. He was shocked to discover the same technology was already patented under my name. I'm not stupid enough to go against a big company without protection. I warned you it would be futile, didn't I? I said, mocking him to provoke his anger further. Williams began ranting incoherently. "Do you know how much money we spent to produce those parts? You set me up. You need to take responsibility for this." It was ridiculous for him to demand that I take responsibility when they stole our technology. Williams seemed quite confused. "I don't understand what you mean by taking responsibility. It's your company that needs to take responsibility. You stole our technology, manufactured counterfeit parts, and used them in your products. This is called patent infringement. It's a serious matter." I could hear Williams sighing occasionally, realizing the gravity of the situation. Williams changed his tone. "You're not thinking of suing us, are you? Don't do that. Instead, why don't we reinstate our contract and have you supply the parts again? Don't you think that would be a better move, Mr. Johnson? Your company must be struggling without our contract, right?" Even now, Williams was belittling us. He still thought a small-town subcontractor would do anything for work, wagging its tail at his command. But a year ago, when we were informed of the reduction, we shifted our focus to S Industries' rival. Now we supply far more parts to their rival, making up for the reduction. Additionally, we have already begun the process to claim compensation for patent infringement totaling around $150 million. By now, the notice must have reached their headquarters. Mr. Williams, I'm afraid it's game over for you. We're proceeding with a compensation claim against your company. You'll likely be called in by your headquarters soon. Although $150 million might not be much for your company, I wonder what kind of consequences you'll face. Wait a minute. We've had a long relationship. Are you going to repay us with betrayal? You wouldn't do that, would you? I was completely taken aback by Williams's words. It's true we had a long relationship, but that was thanks to the bond built with Jones, not Williams. It was Jones from S Industries who advised me to secure the patent. He warned that the company's policies could change with new management. Thanks to Jones's advice, I was able to stand up to the giant that is S Industries. The gears are already in motion. It's now up to your company to handle this situation. I hope you sleep well, Mr. Williams. Insomnia can take a toll on your health. I ended the call with a light remark. This should put Williams in a tight spot. From now on, it's not Williams I'm dealing with, but S Industries itself. A week after my call with Williams, I received a direct call from William Brown, the president of S Industries. He wanted to discuss the compensation claim and requested a meeting. I went to S Industries with my lawyer. I would have preferred to confront them alone, but I was advised that bringing a lawyer would prevent potential complications. Upon being shown into the president's office by his secretary, I saw a thoroughly exhausted Williams present. "We deeply regret the trouble we have caused your company." After a brief greeting, Brown immediately apologized. Williams also bowed his head along with the president, but Williams's eyes were vacant, and he lacked his previous vigor. He was likely under immense pressure. Brown prefaced his offer of a settlement by saying that he was unaware of Williams's unilateral actions. "President Brown, are you saying that Mr. Williams acted alone in this matter?" Isn't it more reasonable to believe that this was done with company approval? I asked directly, voicing my honest doubts. Brown responded calmly, I understand your concerns, but this is the truth. Had Williams consulted me, I would have opposed it. We can't afford to violate compliance. Brown maintained a relaxed smile, showing no change in expression. As expected from the president of a large corporation, he was composed. Could I really extract the truth from a man like this? So you're saying you had no involvement at all? I asked, glancing at Williams. Williams bit his lip. It seemed to me he was enduring a great deal of humiliation. Of course, Brown replied confidently. His unwavering attitude only made him seem more suspicious. Understood. Please tell me the terms of the settlement. With that, Brown took out a document and began explaining. The terms were twofold. First, a payment of $5 million as a settlement, and second, abandoning their in-house parts production to exclusively purchase parts from my company. $5 million compared to the $150 million compensation claim, and it seemed like he was implying we should settle because they continue buying parts from us. I glanced at the lawyer sitting next to me, who gave a silent small shake of his head. This was a sign not to accept, and I agreed. I see. And what do you intend to do about Mr. Williams? I asked without changing my expression, noticing Williams's anxious eyes turning to the president. A heavy silence filled the room. It seemed Williams hadn't yet been informed of his fate. Brown, aware of Williams's gaze, slowly began to speak. Williams will be suspended for 2 months and then demoted from his managerial position to a regular employee, Brown said, sternly. But this was too lenient. It seemed they had no intention of firing Williams. This was unacceptable. Mr. Williams tried to steal our patent. He poached our employee and stole our manufacturing technology. His actions are criminal, yet you intend to keep him in the company? If that's the case, there's no room for negotiation. Williams glared at me with a look of resentment. I motioned to my lawyer and began to rise from my seat. Brown hastily motioned for me to stop. Please don't be hasty. Hear me out. Williams is a valuable asset to us. It's regrettable to lose him. However, if his actions are criminal, I can't defend him. Fine, he will be dismissed, Brown said, trying to save face. Williams shot a sharp glance at Brown, his eyes burning with an unusual intensity. Something was about to happen. Just then, Williams stood up, pointing at Brown. He began to shout, angrily, Don't be ridiculous. You're the one who told me to steal the manufacturing technology. You promised to make me a director if I succeeded, and now you are firing me? As he cursed Brown, Williams's legs gave out beneath him. No matter what he said now, the situation wouldn't change. Williams must have realized this and was venting his pent-up anger. Brown's face twitched for a moment before he regained his composure. With a cold smile, he looked down at Williams. The lawyer sitting next to me seemed so disgusted that he turned his gaze to the view outside the window. It was a pathetic scene, almost unbearable to watch. It was clear that the company had indeed tried to crush my small factory. I responded to Brown's proposal. We cannot agree to a settlement. We also refuse to supply parts, and we won't grant permission to use our patented technology. We've signed a contract with your rival, so from now on, we are adversaries. As I said this firmly, the lawyer, who had been looking out the window, turned his gaze back to me. We looked at each other and nodded firmly. Brown clenched his teeth, let out a big sigh through his nose, and closed his eyes. Though he appeared composed, his inner turmoil was evident. Brown's slightly trembling fingers betrayed his inner turmoil. Williams collapsed on the floor, occasionally made strange noises. It was hard to tell if he was laughing or crying. As I left the president's office with the lawyer, loud noises came from inside. There were sounds of something being struck violently, something being kicked against the wall and glass, shattering. The only ones in the office were Brown and Williams, whatever was happening. Inside, it was surely chaotic. I left S Industries headquarters with my lawyer. Eventually, Williams was fired, as Brown had declared. He was also under investigation for patent infringement. Williams's actions were deeply wrong, both socially and morally. So not only was he fired, but he would also face severe penalties in the future. Regardless of the circumstances, Smith, who aided him, also needed to atone for his involvement. However, after Smith had paid his dues, I was willing to consider taking him back if he wished. His testimony was crucial in exposing S Industries' wrongdoing, and he had extenuating circumstances. As for the $150 million compensation claim against S Industries, it's uncertain how much will be granted, but with clear evidence, a significant amount will likely be paid. Additionally, S Industries will lose the parts we use to supply. This loss might be more damaging than the compensation itself. Now they'll have to negotiate with a rival company we contracted with or find substitutes. The rival company won't give in easily, so they'll probably charge a hefty margin. In any case, S Industries' main products will definitely be affected. President Brown is under intense scrutiny from shareholders, so he's likely to resign soon. As the investigation into Williams progresses, Brown won't remain unscathed. Not only might he resign, but he could also be named the mastermind behind the patent infringement. Our company's performance is steadily improving since we signed a contract with S Industries' rival. The terms are much better than those with S Industries, which will significantly improve our financial situation. While I don't have high expectations for the compensation, our lawyer is quite optimistic, so we might receive a substantial amount. If we do get the compensation, I plan to use it for factory expansion and improving employee benefits. It wouldn't be a bad idea to invest in the development of new technologies either. In any case, our company was saved by Jones, who was the manager in charge at S Industries. He seems to be on a journey of self-reflection now. When he returns, I'd like to share a drink with him like we used to